Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my May wrap up. Most of these books you've already seen. I've recorded reviews for 2 of them and the other ones I'm kind of planning on reviewing them if I can ever figure out how to review poetry. The first book we read in May was Unspeakable Things by Kathleen Spivak. This book is Kathleen Spivak's first novel, although she has written a lot of poetry and short stories in the past, and I've heard a quite acclaimed writer in that field. However, I did not like this book. If you go to my review, you'll see many of the reasons why, but I bought this book because it called itself a magical realism book, and I don't know whether Spivak did that herself or whether it was a decision of the publisher. I understand where they were coming from with the idea that this book was magical realism, but to me there were too many despicable things happening, and as they say, unspeakable things, for me to actually like the book. There were parts that I just thought were too grotesque, and maybe it's just me, maybe it's the type of person that I am, but I found that it glorified certain subjects that I didn't want glorifying or think that they should be glorified, and there were certain things about rape, a character enjoying being raped, and she enjoyed being raped more than she enjoyed the consensual sex, and when I read that it really annoyed me. And then there was stuff in there about paedophilia, and there was just so much that I think I can understand what Spivak was trying to do, but I don't think it was done well, and also the writing isn't that good. I didn't get the book didn't get me. I will be taking this book to the charity shop. Don't know whether I'll read any of the writer's other works, because I don't know whether this is what her writing is usually like. The next book I read is Andrew Macmillan's Physical. This is his first poetry collection, and it won the Guardian First Book Award last year. I really enjoyed this book, sectioned off into 3 parts, and I enjoyed the first and third parts, but I didn't really get the second part, and will probably go back and reread it, but that doesn't stop this book from being a really great poetry collection. I read it and I understand why it won the awards that it did, and I will try and work harder at figuring out how to review poetry so that I can review it better. But I really enjoyed the poems in here and thought that Macmillan talked about subjects in a very, very good way. Yes. Next we have another disappointing read, and that was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now, I have already talked about this book previously, but my biggest problem with this book is the length. And I can remember originally when this book was first gaining its hype, there was talk of how Hanya Yanagihara had been asked to edit it down and said that you couldn't edit artwork, and I don't know how true that is, but I can see where this book needed to be edited, because although there are great moments of prose in here and the writing could be splendid, there are also a lot of telling moments, and a lot of the time this book is exposition. And I know that it just won another award and it was shortlisted for the Booker, so people do actually like the book. So when I went into this book, I went into it knowing that there were difficult topics and remembering what one of my English teachers used to say, in that we have to read difficult topics, and that it tests us as readers and makes us think about these issues. However, I don't think that Yanagihara did it well. Again, in the same way that Spivak did it, I felt that Yanagihara kind of glorified all of these things that were happening to the character of Jude, and seemed to forget all these other characters as she went along, and then remembered them later on in sentences and segments, and you had to kind of remember who she was talking about. And I think it could have done better if it was more polished and had had a better effort. And on Goodreads, I did give it a starred review of only 2 stars because I could see the potential it had, but for me it fell flat. The next book we have is another poetry collection, and that is The Way the Crocodile Taught Me by Katrina Naomi. I saw this on Jen Campbell's channel and decided to buy it straight away, if anything because it had a crocodile. On the back it talks about how Naomi has humour within her poetry, and there is definite humour in here that did have me smiling, it had me laughing at points, and there is also this thing that I really enjoyed in that it was quite personal, and I've said I like personal poetry, even if that person in the Rialto didn't like personal poetry. I really liked Naomi's poems in here. I like that she used humour to tell her stories, because isn't that just a great British way, really? I've heard that there's another collection by this poet, and I will be planning on finding that eventually. Next we have Beauty Beauty by Rebecca Perry, another poetry collection. I bought a lot of poetry this month because I wanted to read more poetry, as it is something that I've been writing more of now that I'm taking my break. The poems in here, although there are some good poems in here, kind of underwhelmed me. There are a few poems in here that went over my head, and I don't know whether that's because I've not read enough poetry to truly understand the book, but I didn't understand a lot of what was going on in here, and that's why I don't think that it's fair that I review it. I'm not sure I gave it a starred review on Goodreads. The poems that I read and liked, I did like, but again, there was too much that went over my head for me to properly give a good review. And finally, we have the last poetry collection, which is Bright Travellers by Fiona Benson. There's a brilliant sequence of poems in this collection where the poet takes on the identity of a lover of Van Gogh, and she narrates these poems about Van Gogh's work and his life, and I found that exceptional. I really enjoyed the poems in here and did find them quite heart-wrenching. There's quite a bit of pathos in here due to some talk of miscarriages, and this is Fiona Benson's debut collection, and I really did appreciate the personal experiences within this book. A great collection of poetry, and I don't know, I'm not going to say choose favourites. I'm not going to choose favourites. I really enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed the majority of the books that I read this month. The camera battery's dying, and I have some washing to do. So, until next time, that is all.